Disappeared. Like magic.
Hello, and we're back. Um, yeah, so in this segment of the program, we're going to talk about prospective memory, which you've talked about a bunch of times, but
Dropping the seeds into place.
and
Planting the seeds.
my conscious mind goes, no! It must be linear. Everything must be in order.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, perspective memory. Brian Osborne, what is perspective memory and how are we going to use it to get lucid in our dreams?
What were we talking about again? so, um, all right. So, perspective memory. It's like, again, for me, it's always I always remember that sign that phrase in Lewis Carroll that was uh, in Alice in Wonderland with the caterpillar. You know, it said it's a poor memory that only works backward. So the idea with perspective memory is that we're projecting forward something that is going to trigger us to become lucid, right? So we're training ourselves in our waking day to be triggered in our dreams to realize that we're dreaming and become lucid. So I mean, some people will use, again, if you read in the books, a lot of people will use sort of a command statement. And you know I'm a big fan of command statements, but in this case, I feel like it's almost too demanding for ourselves and can kind of let us down if we use it. Because if you do that over and over again and you're not getting the results, I don't know. I just think that there's something that sort of turns off when you do that. So I usually,
Are you talking about like when we do the mnemonic induction?
yeah,
Hmm. So
yeah.
like for me, when we had the coaching call for the last segment, and I was saying like that I started to have that sense inside myself, like, oh, like I'm telling myself the next time that I'm dreaming, I'm going to recognize that I'm dreaming as I'm falling asleep, but I don't really believe it. So is that kind of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, it starts to set up almost another barrier for you. You know, it's like you only need to be deflected so many times. And, you know, it's sort of like that idea of the elephant being trained with a chain when it's a baby. And then by the time it's an adult, a string will hold it because it just knows when it feels that around its leg, it's a pattern and it can't get off of that, right? Because it's been trained for so long with, you know, it's been convinced that it can't get off of this tether.
Good analogy for lucid dreaming.
Yeah, I mean it's all the same thing, right? We've been trained to do this, and so for a very long time. So we're, you know, it's not. Don't be so hard on yourself. You know, it takes a while to sort of get back into that place again. You have the latent talent. It's just a matter of, you know, coaxing it along. And so that's what I mean. Like a lot of times, instead, some of the books will say, you know, this is the way you want to do your mnemonic phrase. The next time I'm dreaming, you know, not even the next time I'm dreaming. It's like, tonight I will dream. You know, so it already starts with a statement. You know, tonight I will dream and I will realize that I'm dreaming and I will become lucid. So it's a very sort of, you know, very cut and dried thing. But if you keep failing at that, it wears the level of that command down, right? So it's sort of like you're saying the words, it becomes like a, you know, a prayer that's just rote now. There's no meaning behind it. It's just the words, and the words themselves don't carry very much when there's nothing behind it. So you want to always keep the statement in the realm of, the potential is very high that that's going to happen. So the one thing we know is that we dream every night, whether we remember them or not. We do dream every night. So I always start my statement with the next time I'm dreaming. So okay, well, all right, that's easy. You know, it's very and pretty non-aggressive, right? The next time I'm dreaming, I'll realize that I'm dreaming. So that's a very simple statement to, to kind of put together. And sometimes I'll add in, and I don't even know why I do this. I mean, it's sort of redundant, but sometimes I do, and I've never really changed it up. And I'll say, the next time I'm dreaming, I'll realize I'm dreaming and I'll be lucid. And that's it, so because obviously when you realize you're dreaming in a dream, you're going to be lucid. I mean, they're sort of, that's sort of one and the same, right? But for some reason, I feel like it's almost like an additional statement I'm adding into that momentum of becoming lucid, but not pitching it out so far, that it's not in the future, that I can sort of sustain myself in the future that never comes, right?
Mm.
It's like literally, the next time I'm dreaming, I'll realize I'm dreaming, I'll be lucid.
And this idea of perspective memory is setting up a pattern of succeeding
The
at.
same pattern in the waking day, so that and using different triggers for that, right? So the idea is that every day, and you could write this a week ahead of time, right? Because it's very, very simple, right? It's sort of like
It's
the next
simple in
it's simple in construction, but it takes some mindset and tenacity to put it into practice, right?
I think it even takes a little bit of tenacity to even decide what you're going to do it with and actually do it.
Well,
You
it's
know,
not.
I know
It's not
it's not
very
like a
hard.
big, it's not hard, but it's like just to sit down and, I mean, we'll go through it and then we'll talk about, the ins and outs of it and everything. But I mean, I think, to do it, another one of these odd exercises that requires some forethought about what you're going to use as your trigger and all those things. And, it's like you got to kind of think about it a little bit. And anytime you have to think about it a little bit, part of your mind goes like, how are you using that mental energy that you're burning to do this activity right now? And that very, what's that word where you're stingy, that very stingy aspect of your reptilian brain is like, we've got better things to do with those calories, pal. So anytime you
Right.
have to do an odd exercise like this and sit down, think about what kind of trigger you want to take us through it. I just want to say, I just think that any of these things take a little, as simple as they are, they take a little bit of effort just to get yourself to actually practice them. And
Right.
at
Right.
least for me, that's been my experience. And so I think that it's,
And I think that that's true to some extent. And again, I would stick with my statement that it only takes effort in the beginning, and then when you have one breakthrough, when you have one lucid dream, or even just even just a 3-second lucid dream, where you're there, you realize it, you're in it, you see around, and then you pop back up awake in your bed for real, then then nobody has to coax you to keep doing it, right? Because it's like you'll be doing it all, you'll be driving everybody crazy, you'll be driving yourself crazy. You want to do it so much to sort of get in there and explore more, right? So let's just take a real simple example. I'll set up in a day, um, the next time I hear a dog bark, I'll realize I'm dreaming, right? Or I'm going to check to see if I'm dreaming. It sort of goes
a
together with
reality.
a reality check. Yeah. I
Yeah.
tend to say, the next time I hear a dog bark, I'll realize I'm dreaming. But then I have to do a reality check to check it out. So that's how I sort of put the two together, right? So, and so I go through my day, whatever it is, I'm going through my normal day, and all of a sudden, and it doesn't matter where you hear it, right? It doesn't have to be some organic dog outside your door, right? It could just be, it could be something that you hear on somebody's phone, right? Or you could hear somebody explaining what their dog was doing in the supermarket, and they sort of give this little yip, and it's like that's the same thing. It's anything to trigger your idea. You're looking for a trigger to realize you're dreaming. That's all. And then the reality check is to see, am I in the waking dream or am I in the sleeping dream? So we're going on that idea again that, you know, everything's a dream. It's sort of, again, that sort of Buddhist idea of you know, that the waking dream is also a dream, that it's illusionary, you know, compared to, I mean, it has a physicality to it, but, you know, so does the, you know, the sleeping dream. So it's hard to differentiate between the two. That's why we need the reality check. Okay. So we know the laws of physics, how they work in both places, or we know that they work here, but they don't work so much there. Let's put it that way. That's probably a better way to do it. So like I'm gonna, you know, all of a sudden I hear, you know, I'm going on the computer and there's some feed that comes up and there's a dog barking, or I see a dog, anything around a dog, basically. And then, you know, as soon as that happens, I go, oh, I'm dreaming. And then I pick one of my reality checks, right? If I'm outdoors, I can use the sun. If I'm, you know, if I'm indoors and there's people around or whatever, I can just use the command for float, right? I can use, or, you know, you know, people in their underwear, whatever it is, right? So or I'm using if the other ones work for you, you can check them out, right? You try the clock, look away. Am I dreaming? Look back. Is it the same time or is it different? So all of those things. The caveat with doing this prospective memory is you want to get something that isn't so odd that, you know, it may never show up. And at the same on the opposite side, you don't want to get something that's so common that it drives you crazy all day, because once you've set up the rule, you have to follow through with it or you break your will, right? So there's additional training that starts to get woven into all of this, right?
So really, when you choose, it's like choose something that you can feasibly do, because if you start to not do it, then you're breaking your will and you're really
you're damaging the pattern. So it becomes just another random nothing, right? Just nonsense. So the only reason it's not nonsense is because you have a clear goal for, you know, why you're doing it, and you're following through as if it does matter. Okay. So that's the thing. So I try, you know, so in you know, response to you, I am pretty careful about what I choose, because I can't be distracted all day long by doing that. You know, it's like, I mean, I have a dog, so, and she does bark. So it's like,
you'd be screwed, man.
I'd be done. I wouldn't even get out of the house.
The day would be over.
The day would be over. I'd be like, no, I'm trapped here.
So we've talked about, you know, identifying our dream signs when we started recording our dreams, and that was one of the big things. We're looking for recurring themes in our dreams. Do you combine that with this prospective memory as well?
Oh, sure, yeah. Absolutely. So it's like I use this exactly with one of my dream signs to make it stronger, right? The trains. So, and fortunately, you know, we have a train that's nearby, so or that comes through, you know, but only about once a day, sometimes twice a day, you know, in the summers. And so I'm not always around to hear it. So it does make it a little bit random, but it's sort of a constant trigger in the background for me. Like anytime I hear a train, see a railroad track, see a train, even in a picture, I check, you know, I perk up. I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming, you know, it's like, and then I do a reality check to see which place I am, and that's it. And that carries through into the dream. It's a program that gets carried in, you know, from here. So the better you do it here, I mean, you do need to do it pretty consistently, but the more you do it with a little bit of emphasis where, you know, it really wakes you up. I mean, I kind of feel like I almost have that response. If I see a train or something, it's kind of like, I have this little reflex, like, oh, you know, I get hyper vigilant for a second, you know, like, oh, I'm dreaming. Cool. You know, it's like, you try the reality check, you know, to see which place I'm at. And then carry on. Right. So that's the idea. So it's again, just training sort of putting a different program in your mind for a number of triggers, right? And you don't want to use the same one every day because then it becomes just a sort of a mindless habit, right? You want to pick a different target. And sometimes you can even pick multiple targets just to make sure that you get one of them through the day. You might pick, an odd color or,
Word. Yeah.
or a certain type of car, or a truck or something, not random, but a very specific type so that you can, like, I don't know, the next time I see a truck with, giant monster tires on it, whatever that means in my head, it's like, I'll know I'm dreaming. So I'll realize I'm dreaming. That same, I try to keep the phrasing pretty much the same as it is when I'm doing my mnemonic. I want to keep that pattern so that all of these things are consistent and move toward the end result.
Mm-hmm. So basically, like for the next 2 weeks, as we start to implement this technique, we'll actually take some time, maybe at the beginning of the week, to plan out like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and put the day and then the thing we're going to use for the prospective memory trigger, and then experiment with it. But make it a different thing every day.
Yeah, that way you're causing your mind you're giving it a new trigger, but the end result is always the same, right? You're giving it a trigger, but it's causing you to become alert and know that you're dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Realize that you're dreaming. And then you're just checking out to see which side of the dream am I on? Am I on the physical side, or am I on the internal side, the sleeping side? So, and then, that pattern will carry through. Even if it's not the same mnemonic, you'll be surprised how many times you use a mnemonic induction, when you're going off to sleep, but then one of your one of your triggers that you've used today, comes up. Like all of a sudden I hear a dog barking in the background. I'll be like, oh, it's like, it wasn't even the one that I used to get in. Right. But it's like, I hear the dog and that already spurs me into saying, oh, I'm dreaming. And then, doing a reality check. Oh, I'm in a lucid dream. Great. So then you take off.
Cool. So I guess that's, why I said that in the beginning, about like determining what our prospective memory triggers will be, and taking it upon ourselves to train ourselves in this way takes a little bit of work, because nobody can tell you like what is a good prospective memory trigger for you. It's really like, because every person's day is very unique and every person's dream signs are very unique if you're choosing to utilize them, right? So it's like,
right,
you really have to think like, okay, like what are my days like, and
yeah,
who do I
mean, if you work at a kennel, you don't want to use a dog barking.
Right. Yeah.
You will be insane at the end of the day. So, but yeah, so it just takes a little common sense and a little forethought, but it's not too bad. I mean, it's like, don't make it, just don't make it so unique that it doesn't show up at all, or that the odds are that it would be just horribly rare if it did show up. That's not going to help you, because you're not going to get into the idea of, compounding it. Right. So, and at the same time, you don't want to make it, so common that, it's just happening every few minutes and you just can't, if you're a secretary, you don't want to say, the next time the phone rings,
right.
because I mean, geez, you'd be jumping off the roof after that. Right. So,
but if we do this and we actually are able to follow through with it and get decent at it, you're saying that it's going to dramatically enhance that mnemonic induction technique, because there'll be some momentum behind realizing that you're dreaming, or checking to see if you're dreaming, and doing it on cue with these commands.
Yeah, remember that every time you do it, remember that every time you give yourself a mental command, that I do this every day, once a day, one thing, I have a task that I don't actually write on a list. And I try to remember to do that. Well, every time I do remember to do that, I get a little dopamine hit. that's how the brain works. It keeps you functioning in that direction, right? There's always you know, the stick and the carrot, right? And the carrot works really, really well. The whole body is based on dopamine. So it's like, that's the reward system, right? So every time you succeed at doing that, it gives you a little shot of dopamine. I remembered, oh, great, awesome. It's like, it's not like you're not like singing from the rooftop, right? It's just like, there's a little bit of happiness that goes with remembering to do something and then doing it, obviously. So
What kinds of things do you do it for?
I do it for everything from, something that I need to, pick up for home, something that I need to maybe do a little repair at the house or at the office. Something, I don't do it so that it's a horrible detriment if I do forget, but that it will be a little bit of an annoyance if I do forget it. So um, like if I need light bulbs at the office, right? It's like, yeah, if I don't have them, I can get along with what I have there, but it is a little bit of an annoyance if I don't have it. And so that would be something that I would probably put on that list. And I've done that in the past. And if I didn't remember, it's sort of like, oh, now I got to go through another day without that, so, and it is annoying. So it does make it just slightly more difficult. And so the next day, I remember to do that. And that's that. And then when I do it, I'm like, yeah, it's like there's that little bit of, things are a little bit better. And when they're a little bit better, you get some dopamine for that. And that sort of cements that practice. If you do it consistently, you really build up this prospective memory, right? You really build up this little bit of remembering, and it becomes a pattern. And so what happens when you take that pattern into the dream with your mnemonic induction, the next time I'm dreaming, I'll realize that I'm dreaming. It's sort of like, I need those, I need the light. Today I'm going to pick up those light bulbs for work. And, start driving to work, and it's like, remember the light bulbs at work. I get the light bulbs. It's like, yeah, I got the light bulbs. Okay. Then, I get a little charge from that. And so it's the pattern. If I do just something small like that, again, you don't want to do it with something that's like over the top, but, write it on your list. It'll be way more beneficial for you. But if it's just something small like that, then it's easy to do. I mean, it could be anything, right? It's like, kind of goes along with breaking our patterns too. You could do it with that. Like, tomorrow I'm going to stir my coffee with my left hand. And when I remember to do that, it's like, oh, I remember to do that, because it's such an automatic thing. I mean, how many, I mean, thousands of cups of coffee that I had yesterday. So it's cemented in on the right hand. Okay. So it's like on the left hand, it's just one of those things that it's a natural habit. And even if you catch yourself in the middle, like you start to go for it and you catch yourself, that's awesome. Right. Because it's like you went for the habitual pattern, and it's like, oh, wait a second, I'm supposed to do that with my left hand. You remembered. Well, when I do that, and that would be one of those places again where I would probably, do a reality check, right? It's like, oh, I did it with my left hand. I'm dreaming.
It's interesting to me that these exercises kind of require certain self-awareness, like of what your patterns are, what you do throughout a normal day, and kind of taking a closer look at them and playing with them. And it's, yeah, I think that's interesting. It's like,
well, because we're trying to become more awake, right? We're trying to be more aware of what we're doing here. And so, I mean, why would I want to go into some place that's infinite and unknown with no awareness, right? I mean, that would just be, it's suicidal, right? That's just crazy. Be like, we're going to go on an expedition. Where are we going to go? Well, you don't need to know that until you get there. Arctic, tropical, water, desert. I mean, it's like, how would you, why would you do that? Why would you agree to something like that? That's insane, right? So yeah, the very first exercise we do is one of those things that we're going to go over in a minute, right? It's like you want to be able to observe your own mind and, know yourself, right? Know yourself. It's about becoming aware of, who you are, how you respond to things, being really, involved in the game here, not just sort of sitting on the sidelines and, you know, watching the watching the ball go back and forth over the net. That's not our, that's not my role here. I want to be one of the players. So you have to become very aware of, everything in order to, really play at the highest level.
Cool. Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's clear, and we'll wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.